much. And I don't think you need an introduction because, quite frankly, you'd be living under a rock. I see you on nightly news programs. I see you on social media. I see your books on the bookshelves. And I see you really in the middle of a revolution. And you will say, you'll be vulnerable that you started this decades ago as you started your own journey in investing into brain health. So I want very quickly for a step back, a macro view. You've dedicated your life to brain health. Why did you do that?
Well, I became a psychiatrist because someone I loved tried to kill herself. And uh, before I went to medical school, I was an x ray technician. And our professors used to say, "How do you know unless you look?"
Mhm.
And I love psychiatry, but it's the only medical specialty that never looks at the organ it treats. Think about that.
Mhm.
And I started agitating my professors. It's like, well, why aren't we looking at the brain? Obviously, the brain is our organ. And they said, in the future. And I'm like, no, what about now? And when I started looking, I realized my brain wasn't as healthy as it could be.
Mhm.
And most of my patients' brains were not as healthy. Plus, I hated the term mental illness from early in my career. It's like nobody wants that. It shames people. And it's not right. They're brain health issues. Nobody wants a mental illness. Everybody wants a better brain. So, what if mental health was brain health? And it changed everything for me personally. Actually, I'm going to look at my daughter's dating someone. I'm going to look at his brain today. I'm so excited uh, because that's the rule in my family. If you date one of my five kids, I'm looking at your brain if I think you might stick around.
Okay, I like that. I might have to tell my husband to switch careers because I really want to know what all of the brains look like. So I told you I had I was in a little bit selfish in this episode that I have an invested interest. I have three children, one of them diagnosed with ADHD. I've been told for years to medicate my daughter, who is a high performer, tests off the charts for ELA, but always does like CD, doesn't do well in math, doesn't retain some of the basic math facts. And it really went against my gut to medicate her. I mean, this is a little girl whose endocrine system is untouched by even melatonin, right? I mean, and this is, and I'm not trying to get political. We're not going to go Tylenol. I'm just telling you, we're not totally hippie, but we have chickens in the backyard. I make my own sourdough. There's a number of things that I do to try to create healthy humans. What I am hearing is a generation of kids, now young adults, who have been given stimulants at a young age and are now in their 20s and 30s and are still on stimulants, still on medication. Maybe some of them are coming to me, and this is true. They're facing mental illness, they're facing depression. Why is it when you have a child who has attention issues, right away it's give them medication or not? That's it. Those are my options.
Well, in the late 1980s, managed care took over psychiatry, and psychiatrists became the prescriber. And so the only hammer they had for whatever situation they were in were drugs. And I was fortunate to be trained in the early 80s when I was like the whole person doctor. I was the therapist. If there was medication needed, great. I would recommend dietary interventions. And when I saw the shift, I'm like, oh, this is going to be very bad for our society. Now, I'm not opposed to medicine. I'm just opposed to that's the first and only thing you do. If you have an ADHD child, the first thing you should do is begin to look at their environment. What are they eating? How much are they sleeping? Kids who snore, a little bit of sleep apnea in kids causes ADHD symptoms. Chronic stress at home will do it. Chronic exposure to cell phones and social media and video games will do it. I mean, the first thing really is clean up their diet and clean up their environment and then still see if they have it. And if They do still some natural treatments like fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids can be really helpful. Um, and if you do all of those things and you see that their iron or ferritin levels are good and their thyroid's fine, then you could think about a low dose of medication. The problem is, even if they're fully ADD and you can see it in generations of their family, they will need a lot more medication if you don't manage their environment.
Okay, so I'm hearing twofold there, but I want to ask you a loaded question here. You've been doing this for decades. Do you have a generation of folks, maybe in their 20s and 30s, who struggle with just this? That maybe they were prescribed medication in their preteen, their teen era, and now they're dealing with the fact that essentially they were medicated through puberty. Which, by the way, I'm also not criticizing parents who medicate. Right? Each journey is his or her own. So I say that obviously non-judgmentally. But are you seeing that anecdotally because you're still practicing?
Well, it's such a loaded question
It is.
because if somebody really has ADD and you sort of manage their environment and you didn't medicate them,
Mhm.
it's almost like not giving glasses to someone who has trouble seeing. That there's this notion that I'm better, smarter, more evolved if I don't medicate my child than if I do. And what I've seen is appropriate use of medication can take a child from D's and C's to A's and B's and get them way closer to their potential.
How do you
Uh,
know that threshold though? Where like because it feels as if it's I would say I could count on my hand the number of kids who are medicated. Again, not but are we over prescribing?
so we're doing both. We're over and under prescribing.
Okay.
Often under prescribing for girls because boys have more behavior problems and they sort of grate against their environment and parents are like, okay, I can't deal with this. Girls don't live up to their potential, but they don't have as many behavior problems. And so we often miss inattentive ADD. And then girls are sort of forced to live a lifetime of mediocrity. And this is very personal to me. I have a hyperactive daughter and one that's not. And the one that was hyperactive, I mean, at 4 years old, I sent her for an evaluation and clearly had ADHD. The other one didn't get diagnosed until 10th grade. And this is going to sound really terrible when I say this, but I just never thought she was very smart. And I feel terrible when I say that. But when I actually figured it out, 10th grade, she comes to me at 1 o'clock in the morning, and she'd always stay up till 1 or 2 o'clock studying because she was so diligent. And she was just crying. And she said, Dad, I can never be as smart as my friends. And
Ugh.
so the next day I scanned her. That's what we do at Amen Clinics. I have 11 clinics around the country and she had sleepy frontal lobes, which is classic for kids who have ADD or ADHD. And it's just different era names for the same thing. And on a little bit of medicine, um, very diligent child who mostly got B's and C's, who 3 months later got straight A's and ended up getting into one of the best veterinarian schools in the world. And um, so I worry there's so much negativity around medication when it's never the first, it's never the only thing I do, but I would just hate to withhold something that could dramatically change a a child's life.
Okay, but when you talked about all the steps ahead of time, and I know you go through some of this when in your raising mentally strong kids. That was last year. That was book number 42, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got, because there's 43 in total, but there's 20 best selling, and this one came out last year. I was reading some excerpts from it. Is you do want people to go through all the steps, the dietary steps, the screen time before medication. Because where I am as a parent is, how do you know to make the responsible decision? You have it in your gut that that's not the first thing you want to do. And I have these conversations with parents, not only locally, but parents really, those who are engaged in the show. A lot of us are facing these decisions, and we really don't know what to do. And you say in your book, the parent has to be the frontal lobe. Well, that's a huge responsibility.
Well, and if you have an ADD child, the first thing I think about is, where did it come from? Because generally, if you really have an ADD child, you see it in mom, or you see it in dad, or you see it in mom's people or dad's people. If you don't, then it could be from a head injury, or it could be from some sort of toxic exposure, or it could be from, the so many bad habits we have today. Brand new study, just horrifying. Children who get cell phones early have a much higher incidence of suicidal thoughts in their early 20s. Isn't that crazy? And so we're stealing their dopamine. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter that helps us focus. It's the neurotransmitter that ADD medications work on. And we're basically wearing out the dopamine stores with video games and cell phones and social media and so on. But I think, just going back to your situation, do you see it either in yourself or in the people on your side? Or do you see it in dad or the people on his side? Because it is very heritable. It runs in families.
Okay, so I would say, yeah, I haven't left the jar in the peanut butter in 41 years, and I can't close a door if my life depended on it. But I've also survived, I've survived in network news for 21 years. So can I tell my daughter? So this is a valid question. Me saying tough it out, I did just fine surviving in network news while your dad played Major League Baseball, which was very challenging to do. You can tough it out too. So I actually would think you would say to me, I'm doing her a disservice.
Yes.
Okay.
And because psychiatrists never look at the brain, they're making diagnoses based on symptom clusters with no biological data. So wouldn't it be smart, if you have this question about yourself or about one of your children, to look at their brains? I mean, that's what I've been on a mission for since 1991, when I ordered my first SPECT scan. It's like, well, as a psychiatrist, why am I handicapped? And why do I handicap my patients by guessing?
Well, and you said in one of those, you said if it would be like 1,000 psychiatrists, only 2 would recommend looking at the brain. Did you say that in one of your?
Yes. And that's insane.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I'm saying the emperor has no clothes all the time while the emperor is trying to kill me. And so it's like, the emperor has no clothes. Why are psychiatrists the only medical doctors who never look at the organ they treat? And the big winner is the pharmaceutical industry. So I am up against a $500 billion a year industry. And because when you look, so you're hearing me argue for medication,
Sure. No.
not for the indiscriminate use of medication, where 25% of the American population is on psychiatric drugs. Huge win for the pharmaceutical industry. Huge loss for our society, especially because now SSRIs, Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro, Celexa, have been associated with dementia. Now, wrap your brain around that, And all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe this is not a good thing. But given that I've been an expert in ADD for almost 40 years, it's like for the children who really, or adults who really have ADD, like my wife has ADD and she never met a cabinet door she wanted to close. She's
Ever.
actually so smart that she taught our white shepherd how to close them after her. It's hysterical.
I have German short hair pointers. She needs to come to my house. I can't train those things to do a damn thing. Oh my goodness. Um, okay, so devil's advocate, which is hard for me because obviously I told you I was geeking out a little bit about even getting the chance to talk to you, is accessibility. Yes, I live in the South. I live in Atlanta. I've already actually, and we've talked about this years ago. We were talking about alcohol use, and now we're talking about kids, which there might be a correlation there, right? But is this expensive, Dr. Amen? And I'm investing in her. She's doing a lot of OT. We've done a lot of dietary investment. And I did say, and I've met with her pediatrician, it is on the table. It is something that we're considering. So I'm not totally anti-medication, but I think it's challenging because I'm investing in my daughter's health with a lot of things that require money and time. And of course, I know that that medication is on the table. And I mean, I could afford to take her to your clinic and it's near the house, but it's an investment and not everybody has the ability to do so. You do have a lot of
But
clinics.
most people, you know, if you think about it, when you send a child away for summer
Sleepaway camp. Yep.
or you send them to college, for goodness sakes, you know, I mean, those are tens of thousands of dollars. A whole evaluation at my clinic is about $5,000. When you think of, and people just don't think, well, what does it cost to have a brain that is not fully optimized? Well, over their lifetime, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions
Mhm.
of dollars. And it's not that much. And when you just think of the benefit of not only looking at, but then falling in love with your brain, oh my goodness, it just helps you for the rest of your life. I just dropped a podcast I did with Tim Tebow,
Oh,
and
I listen.
you know,
Yeah.
an awesome human who's doing really great things in the world. But if he doesn't get his brain better, he's not going to live up nearly to the potential that he has. And I'm so excited about helping people have better brains and better lives. And it just means, you know, I don't take broken people and put them back together. I take awesome people and help them be more awesome. But why would we ever do it if we couldn't look at the organ we're trying to influence?
So when we and that episode, I mean, Tim is just such a vulnerable human being. I think that's also what makes it so compelling. And you both are really. I mean, it was just it's I would recommend anyone, to listen to it. When we talk about, you said it's a little bit of both, that we're almost under medicating, over medicating. Are we, you may have answered this, are we over diagnosing kids with ADHD? But you also said we're under diagnosing. Some of it you would probably argue is self inflicted with things like social media, with things like technology, AI, and cell phones. Agree or disagree?
Agree. Absolutely. That we're not really taking a thoughtful approach. And so when I see a new child, the first thing I want to do is thoroughly assess them. And ADD is not one thing. I wrote a book called Healing ADD that I argue it's seven different things. Like, stop giving everybody Ritalin because Ritalin helps two of the seven types and it makes the other five types worse, which
Yep.
is why Ritalin has a bad reputation. For the right brain, miraculous. For the wrong brain, it's a nightmare.
Mhm.
And so if you don't look, you don't know. But, you know, if they have ADD, they're going to have it in 6 months. So why don't we, in these 6 months, really monitor and decrease video games, cell phone use, social media use, and feed them right? I have so many testimonials when kids go on a gluten-free, dairy-free, corn-free, soy-free artificial dyes and sweetener free diet, um, they get better. There's one study from Holland that's actually been replicated when they took ADHD kids and put them on an elimination diet. 70% of the kids lost their ADD. So why not do that first rather than you have 6 of these 9 symptoms? Let's start you on Adderall. Like,
Right.
see,
Right.
that's like insanity to me. So, yes, I'm a fan of medication for the right person after we make sure we put their brain in a focused environment.
Okay, so I have a couple questions before I let you go. First and foremost, uh, parents who are in this predicament, you went through it. I am in the midst of it. You're always looking toward who has already gone through it. So, what advice would you give parents out there who are struggling, who are grappling with it? Because, like you said, it isn't just you're putting a band aid if it's not the right medication. And it's hard for parents to make this decision.
Well, like, read my book, Healing ADD. You can also go, I have a free online test,
Mhm.
addtypetest.com, to know which of the 7 types you or your child might have, and do the natural things first, but don't do the ADD thing. The ADD thing is when you're upset, think about it. And then when things sort of settle down, don't think about it because you're thinking about other things, right? That's the ADD way. It's like, no, this is serious. And if there's that question, and I can see it in my family, and my child is really struggling, focus on it. And for the first couple of months, do the right thing with diet and technology, exercise. And if that stuff doesn't really remediate it, then get them properly evaluated.
It also sounds like that there might be a generation like me, parents in their 40s, who you would diagnose. And there was a podcast that I listened to last week. I think it was with Steven, and you said you actually have an ADHD brain. So, do
Well, we
you,
scanned Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a
yeah,
CEO. He totally had an ADHD brain. And many CEOs do, and many news personalities do. And that's why they gravitate to those jobs, because it's always new, always interesting, always moving. Um, and the only reason to take medicine is if the ADD is impairing your ability to be your best. And even though you've been very successful, and my wife, when she and I met, she was a neurosurgical ICU nurse, very successful. But it was hard. She expended more effort than she needed to.
Mhm.
And getting it treated, and really more importantly for her mother to get it treated, uh, she's able to accomplish the same things with a lot less stress.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing from you is essentially if you notice these traits in your child, to also look in the mirror and think of ways to take care of yourself. So before I let you go, when we're thinking of, I mean, you said reduce caffeine consumption because you're cutting off circulation to your brain. All of the things that I love to do. I mean, I don't drink quite as much as I used to. We had a conversation years ago, and I think it was after I met you. I said, well, okay, maybe I'll dial it back. But I'm sure there's a myriad of toxins in my environment. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm doing wrong. So, would you also say to the parents, evaluate yourself, invest in yourself? Because we forget that the brain is something we should take care of. We work out in the gym, but we don't think of our most important muscle, right?
Well, I'm actually working with the White House on a national brain health revolution. I'm very excited about this. What if I could get everyone to ask themselves one question every day? Is what I'm doing now good for my brain or bad for it? And does it honor my creator, however you think of your creator? Is it good for my brain or bad for it? By limiting or getting rid of the alcohol, well, you're answering that question with love of yourself, love of your future self, love of your family, love of the reason you're on the planet. In everything we do, is it good for my brain or bad for it? Me talking to you, it's good for my brain because it's purposeful and I like it. And, humans are healthier when they interact with other humans.
Mhm.
And so, but staying up late tonight, binge watching, a show or playing video games is bad for my brain. If I want my memory to be better tomorrow, go to bed half an hour early tonight. Every decision we make, if we could just ask ourselves that question, and that's what the revolution is all about.
But what motivates you, Dr. Amen? I mean, you've got 40 plus books and clinics across the country. You've already changed lives. Why keep going? The White House?
Well, because that's why I'm on the planet. I want to make things better. I want to be helpful. It brings dopamine to me, right? It makes me happy when I walk down the street and someone goes, "You changed my life." I love that. And 58% of young people report a lack of meaning and purpose, which is one reason why depression has skyrocketed, because people are so focused on themselves. But when you focus on being useful to other people, you just feel happier.
Mhm. Well, my cup is filled. So thank you for joining us. And you have a book coming out in December, right?
Change your brain, change your pain, which I'm very excited about because, I'm 71 and it just got to the point. It was my knee, it was my hip, it was my neck, it was my back. I'm like, oh no, we need to understand pain at a really deep level. And what I came to realize is emotional pain and physical pain run on the same circuits in the brain. So if you want to lose your back pain, you got to get your brain
That
healthy.
I feel like that's a new phenomenon. I could keep you, and I want to respect your time, but yeah, I feel like we don't talk about emotional trauma and pain and unresolved issues enough. But Dr. Amen, I think I'll use it as a cliffhanger, and then it'll be bribery when your book starts skyrocketing for you to come back and talk more about that topic because that's another topic for parents. So in the meantime, we'll leave that cliffhanger, and thank you for joining us.
So great to see you. Thank you for helping me spread the message of brain health.